I feel a bit guilty about saying this because it's like praising your latest work or something. But the Quiet American is the best performance I've ever given. It doesn't mean it's any good, it's just the best performance. It's just the best performance I could give with the best part I've had in a long, long time.
What makes it, what do you mean when you say it's the best you've ever given? How do you define that?
It's the farthest I got away from myself and the deepest I ever got into anyone else. That's how I describe that. Because I think that my form of movie acting has always been, put it another way, there is a point when you change over from a movie star, which means that you get a script and say, how can I change this script to suit me? And then you get the girl. I've now changed from a movie star to a movie actor, where I get a script and I say, how can I change this script? And you don't get the girl, but you do get the part. And if in the Olympics they have ice skating, and in ice skating, when you do your twirls and whatever it is, they have a mark which is degree of difficulty. And so I was very fortunate at a time in my life when I was old enough to understand a man like Thomas Fowler, who I play in this, and I was an old enough film actor to be able to perform to the absolute best of my ability with a director who made me do that, because he's 6'5" and weighs 250 pounds. And so you get to a situation where everything became right just for you at that moment. And that is incredible luck, or God, and probably in my case both. And that's what happened to me on The Quiet American. It was a very difficult picture to make sometimes physically, but I was more happy to go to work than I was on the French Riviera. So that gives you a rough idea of how I feel about this film.
Can you talk a little bit about what was particularly challenging? What it was in the role that required you to dig so hard? What it was that was the challenge that made it special?
Well, the challenge was, I'll put it another way. I was going to do an American accent in a movie, and I said to the man who was teaching me the American accent, I said, I don't want people to sit there and say, there's that British actor, Michael Caine, doing the best American accent I've ever heard. Isn't he wonderful? I wanted people to sit there and see me doing nothing. Because when an American does an American accent, he does nothing. He just, you wake him up in the middle of the night, all of you speak with an American accent, you know? And that's how I wanted, I didn't want people to watch this film and say, oh, isn't Michael Caine wonderful as Thomas Fowler? I just wanted them to sit there for 2 hours and at the end of it go, oh, it's not Thomas Fowler, it's a movie. That's what I tried to do, disappear. I started to be an actor because I was very shy, and I suppose I've come full circle now. I'm still shy, and I'm trying to disappear, not behind the curtains as I did when I was a small boy and neighbors came. I'm disappearing behind the people I play.
Very good. You started with another name. You're now Sir Michael Caine.
Yes. Yeah.
You were born in a charity ward to a father who worked in the fish market and a mother who was a charwoman.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what your childhood was like and how you first began to imagine yourself an actor?
Well, my childhood, I came from a very poor family, but only in money. They were rich in everything else, from which I regard myself as being very lucky, because I've met a lot of people in my life who came from very rich families, and that's what all they got from it. They were very poor in everything else. And I'd rather take my parlay than that one. The way I became an actor was I was in a little play at school when I was 10, and I went on and I got a big laugh because my flies were undone. But I didn't know this. until I came off. It was a bit of a disappointment. I retired for 2 years. And I never went back until I was 12, when I was in a youth club, and there was an amateur dramatic society, and of course all the pretty girls joined it, and none of the guys would join it because they felt it was sissy to join the amateur dramatic society. But at 12, I was desperately trying to kiss a girl, any girl. It didn't matter what she looked like, anything, just to get a kiss, see how it was. And there was a very pretty girl in the amateur dramatic society, and I thought, well, if I get in there, I could get a part as her lover, and then I'd have to kiss her at some time. Not just in the performance, but over and over again in rehearsals, you know? And I thought that was a great idea. So I got into the Amateur Dramatic Society, and I always got the part of the policeman who came in at the end. I always remember a wonderful line in a real play, which was, you know those Agatha Christie plays where they're all at the mansion and they're all getting bumped off and no one knows who it is, and the whole mansion is owned by the Duke of Ponsonby or something. And at the end, this is what I remember it in repertory. When I was in rep, at the end, they're all there, all these suspects, and they've called the police. And when the policeman comes, the Duke comes out and says, "Arrest most of these people." It's sort of a bit like that, you know. But I eventually became an actor. When I was 20, I was a soldier for 2 years in the national service. We were called up and we had to serve 2 years, and I was a soldier. And when I came out, I was working in a factory, and I kept telling everybody I wasn't going to work here long, I was going to be an actor. And there was an old man working with me. He said, "Have you looked at the stage?" I said, "What's the stage?" He said, "It's a newspaper about the theatre." I said, "I've never heard of it." He said, "My daughter's an amateur singer," he said, "and she advertises and gets little jobs in the stage." And I said, "Can you bring," he said, "Yeah, I'll get you last week's." The next day he brought me in last week's, and it said, "Wanted stage managers to do small parts and things like that." So I answered it, and that's how I came into the theatre. I went into the theatre as a stage manager. The great advantage of that is that the pay was very small, but I always used to look first through the play each week, weekly rep, and see if there was a meal sequence in it, so I could order extra sandwiches for myself, so, which is how I ate most of the time. You always have got a big meals. It's great. The actors didn't eat much because they were terrified with dry throats and mouths. It's very difficult to eat on stage. You know, you're scared shitless, and you're going. They always take little bites, even in films. They were like that. I'm famished. What I'm saying is I'm scared. and that's how I started. And I got 1 line, 2, 4, 8, 16. I'm not going much further. I'm not very good at mathematics. But anyway, I wound up with a very good part. And I was so nervous. I had to be a cad and a bounder and get this young lady drunk and seduce her. And I seduced her, and she got absolutely bombed on stage with a bottle of whiskey that I forgot to take the top out of. So I was pouring nothing. And we're both getting bombed on this. You know. That was my first experience of a proper part.
Can you, did you ever go to a proper acting school of any kind? Did you study acting in any sort of formal way?
No, it's very difficult to explain probably now, but I came from a milieu and a background in England when I was 12, which was a long time ago. And it may seem difficult to believe, but we didn't know there was such a thing as a drama school. It's the complete and utter ignorance. The complete ignorance is of not knowing what you don't know. I didn't even know what I didn't know. There were drama schools and everyone was going to them, but in my area, most of the people I knew were in prison, not in drama school. I'll give you a rough idea where I came from. So there was no question of going to something I didn't know existed, if you see what I mean.
Sure.
Never knew.
Sure. Do you recall a particular point I was looking at your filmography, which is amazing. It's over 90 films in 46 years. Do you remember a point where you thought, I'm over the hump now? I think I got it.
Yeah. There was I did a little play on television in England, and the next day I was walking along the street with my then flatmate Terence Stamp, and we were both unknown, and then we were walking along Piccadilly and we saw Roger Moore coming towards us, and he was the saint, very famous. And we said, look, you know how you do when you see someone famous? Look who's there, look. It's Roger Moore, it's Roger Moore. He says, yes, yeah. He said, and he started walking straight towards us. And he came straight to me, and I just stood there sort of petrified because Roger Moore was coming. And he was very famous, you know, and famous people sometimes scare people, you know. I've done it myself now, I understand. And he said to me, are you Michael Caine? And I said, yes. He said, well, you were in that play last night, The Compartment, on television, weren't you? I said, yes. He said, you're going to be a big star, Michael. And he walked away. And I stood in the street, I thought, Jesus. And Terry said, don't believe him. And I tell you the truth, then Terry became famous and I didn't. Terry did Billy Budd for Peter Ustinov, and he became very famous. Very famous. And even more famous, he dated Gene Shrimpton, which was even better than getting a movie.
Do you remember a particular film that you did or a particular play that you did where it all seemed to fall into place, or did you always feel comfortable doing it? Did you feel like an amateur when you started, and did you get over that, and was there a particular
I had an extraordinary, insane belief in myself. I mean, for years people told me to give it up because I was absolutely poverty-stricken in the theatre for 9 years. This rather gangly, awkward guy, very skinny guy, if you would believe me, very skinny guy wandering around with a Cockney accent, which was then extremely unfashionable because, and I never thought I should give up. I always thought I knew how to do this, and I especially knew how to do. I was in the theatre, and I did a lot of it, obviously, over 9 years, even though I was out of work a lot. I knew how to do that, but I knew that if I could get into movies, I really knew how to do that because I was the first generation. You know, normally you read a biography of a British actor, you know, and it says, when I was 6 or 7 or 8, Nanny took me to the theatre, and the curtain went up, and I saw the lights, and the actors came on, and I knew this is what I wanted to be forever. You know, I went to the Threepenny Rush, which was a children's cinema, on a Saturday morning. The first time I ever saw an actor, it was The Lone Ranger, and it was very, very rough, you know, kids fighting and all this stuff. And I mean, The Lone Ranger started, and then everything went black, and I didn't know what it was, and someone had thrown an overcoat over the balcony, and it landed over my head. And it was that sort of, and this was my sort of glamorous introduction to the cinema. But it fascinated me completely, and from then on, whenever I could get any money, I went to the pictures we used to call it, and every single day. And I am the greatest movie fan. Some of you will be big movie buffs. I'm a big movie buff. I've seen every movie, all the bad ones, you know, anything. You can't hide from me if you made a duck picture. I know you made it. I'm like late night television. I turn up all the time. And so, and I studied this, and I didn't copy any actor. I used to sit there seeing when they did it wrong, when they hadn't convinced me. And then I'd sit on the subway and watch the people and see how they did it, and how they talked together, and how their faces were when they were listening, you know? I remember a sequence I saw a few years ago. There was a rocket went up with the first lady, American with the First Lady scientists on it, and it exploded. And the camera, when it exploded, was on this lady's parents on the ground. I don't know, it was on CNN. I don't know whether you remember this. Now, this rocket with their daughter in exploded, and she was obviously gone, right in a flash, right in front of their eyes. Now, 99 actors and actresses would have gone, and collapsed. These two stood there absolutely silent for 5 minutes. 5 minutes they stayed on them. Nothing happened. They never took their eyes off this. The rocket had fallen. They kept their eyes on the smoke, where the rocket had, you know. And that teaches you lessons. That people don't do things unless they're being phony. Real people act all the time. When they're telling you a lie, they will act, obviously. And they will act in order to impress you. You know, if someone says, "So what are you doing?" They put, "That's acting. It's not being real." What time do you think this is? My wife says that to me. And everyone puts their hands on their hips, you know. Have you ever noticed how whenever anyone orders a peppermill in a restaurant, everyone goes, you watch, everyone. No one ever says, "Could I have a peppermill?" They go, "Could I have a peppermill?" I just thought I'd throw that in. It's a behavior thing.
When you said you had this, you call it insane, we call it justified, belief in yourself, what did you think you were talking about? Did you think of it as imitating things that you'd seen? Did you think of it as becoming somebody other than yourself?
That's that's the one. I thought I could become someone else on the screen and not be myself.
Did you think
and be realistic.
Did you think there was a method to this?
No, I didn't know. What I did, the nearest I came to a drama school, there was a woman called Joan Littlewood who had a theatre, like a group theatre, in the East End, which is a very poor area of London, it was for like working class kids to get a start, you know. And I'd been in repertory for quite a while. I came to London and I joined her in this group theatre, and she taught Stanislavski. She was a communist, Joan Littlewood, member of the Communist Party, and she lived in this great big house and had a yacht. I thought that's a great thing to be, a communist. Many years later, I went to many communist countries and I found all the leaders had great big houses and yachts. Jesus Christ, nearly as good as capitalism. Anyway, where was I? Anyway, I joined her, and the first two things I learned from Stanislavski was sense memory, is bringing back experiences, which is how, you know, you can cry very easily because we've all had, and the other thing was that something very important to me, which was rehearsal is the work, the performance is the relaxation. So that when I arrive on a movie set, I'm not going through hell trying to get it right in the 20 minutes we got while the guy's lighting the set. I have done it at home for 4 hours, and I walk in there as though it's a walk in the park on a day off. That's the way I do it, and I'm joking and everything, I work out of relaxation.
Tell us what you do at home. What's the 4 hours? What do you do?
The 4 hours is working out who I am, where I am, why I am, what are we doing here, what are we doing here? And the other thing is learning the dialogue 1,000,000 times over until it is so familiar to you that if someone says a line in the middle, you will answer. You don't wait for a cue or anything. And working out, and then looking at the other person's dialogue and imagining them saying it. And what would be your reaction if someone says something to you? Very often you see actors will be listening to someone and they'll be listening quite intently. But whether the person says, "I'm going to smash your face in," or "I love you," their expression doesn't change. And if you look at each other when you're talking to each other, your expression changes all the time. Not big, just lightly. And that's what you're working out, you know, what you're listening to.
Do you like to rehearse formally for film, or do you prefer not to rehearse? When I say formally, I mean, do you like to spend
weeks before?
Yeah, 2 weeks, get together with the other actors and the director and sit down and really work for 2 weeks or 3 weeks like...
It's either helpful or it isn't, because there are movies for which it's absolutely necessary. Like this movie, we rehearsed for 6 weeks because Do Hayen, this is Do Hayen, she didn't speak English and she'd only ever made 2 little tiny pictures in Vietnam, so we had to rehearse like hell, you know, and she learned English in 6 weeks. She worked like so hard. And in this case, in this picture, this rehearsal was invaluable to us, you know. But I remember when I did The Man Who Would Be King with Sean Connery and Christopher Plummer, John Huston called a rehearsal, and after about 10 minutes, we were all in the bar, bummed out of our minds. I mean, you realise we start reading this, The Man Who Would Be King, Sean, and Christopher Plummer and me, and John sitting there going, God, keep going, lads, keep going. And, you know, and it got quite boring, because we knew exactly what we wanted to do with it. We were it. You know what I mean? There was no stretch for any of us. And John suddenly said, let's go and have a drink. And so we all went and got bombed, and we never rehearsed again. So it's just which film it is. You know, Death Trap, we rehearsed because it was a play. Sleuth, we rehearsed forever because it was a play, and there was only Larry Olivier and me in it, you know? So we rehearsed that for 6 weeks.
Have you changed the way you work or prepare over these 46 years? Has it varied a lot?
I thought he was going to say I made 46 films in 90 years.
I mean,
it's not, you know, it's a very quiet career I've had. One picture every 2 years.
Do you think that you work very differently now than you worked the first 10 or 15 years?
The only thing that has changed in me is confidence.
Really?
Confidence, yeah. I was always deadly scared of failure. Now I'm just afraid. By the way, it never leaves you. The fear of failure. And it's not just, I don't mean, when you say the fear of failure, I don't mean that we're not going to get any box office. I mean, we're not going to get the scene right.
Sure.
That's where the fear of failure starts. It's that early. Actually, the fear of failure is you're not going to get the studio on time.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. The whole thing is fear.
Do you think that there's a difference in the way that you work between what you do when you work on the stage and what you do when you work? Do you alter your approach to it, a technique, if you will?
Oh my God, yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a Jack Lemmon story, was it? When he did a picture with Willie Wyler, he'd been a stage actor, and he did the take, and Willie said, cut, do less, Jack. Cut, do less, Jack, cut. And Jack finally said, if I do any less, I'll be doing nothing. And Willie said, now you got it. And that's it. You've got to be doing nothing, but you've got to be doing nothing as far as the crew is concerned. If the crew are interested, you're overdoing it. If I have a big close-up and I look up and there's one of them reading the paper, I'm going, doing great here, I'm doing really good. Because he can't see a bloody thing, he's bored shitless here. Yeah.
Is there a film that you can remember that taught you more than any other film? Is there a film that you say, man, I came through that film and I learned more? I had to deal with a problem or a series of problems.
Yeah. Alfie, because it's the first time I starred in a movie, and there was massive dialogue, and right through to difficult things like talking to the camera, and keeping sort of cheerful all the time. You know what I mean? And what we did at the first difficulty on Alfie is they said you've got to talk to the camera. So I got video cassettes of Tom Jones with Albert Finney and Larry Olivier in Richard III, and they talked in a theatrical way. They came on and talked to the camera as though they were me talking to you. And I did that, and it didn't work. And Lewis Gilbert, the director, said, we got to reshoot it. And what we did is we had it so that I would be, say, with Shelley Winters, holding her, and the camera would be here, and I'd just go, she's in beautiful condition, and then go back to her, as little asides to a personal friend.
Right.
So everybody in the audience stopped being an audience. They became one person who I was talking to, straight at them.
Right.
So that's how it worked. And it doesn't work any other way, because we tried every way, I promise you.
Without naming, I'm not looking for gossip here. I'm just curious.
I know a lot of gossip.
Well, we'll get to that.
What do you want to know? I'll tell you.
Just in the interest of you know, the actors here present, have you must have, in the course of all of those films, found yourself with, let's say, a director who you didn't trust and you weren't comfortable with.
Yes.
What did you do? What do you do? Did you find, I mean, has it happened?
I'll tell you what you do, yeah. You get all the other actors together. First of all, make sure that they agree and they're not related to the director. Because they'll tell him. And then you just say, lads, we're in it here. Let's direct ourselves. You know, and then you direct yourselves.
And you
because
direct
you
yourself.
just, but there are pictures that you get into where, you know, 2 days in you go, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
You know, what have I done?
Yeah.
And then you just keep smiling. And then what you do is you work twice as hard to get the review, which I've got quite a lot in my time. Is the picture stank, but Michael Caine was very good in it. And that's what you've got to try for, because that's the only thing left. Yeah. It's absolute desperation. It's a sort of lifeboat. You say, well, I was good anyway, you know. The rest of it was crap, but I was good. It says so in the paper.
Have you ever found yourself having to face a scene that required something and it wasn't there for you? The role, the script called for something and you started to wrestle with it and it wasn't working.
Yeah, it's in a picture called The Swarm, which is about killer bees. And I was this top-notch scientist and biologist, entomologist, who had to go in there and figure out how to get an antidote to the poison, because it was very virulent. They were from Brazil. Killer, you know how the bees are from Brazil. You know, they don't give a damn about anybody. Once they're on, they get on the beach there and sting the hell out of everybody. So they gave me, and I was in great company. You know, we knew this picture was crap. You know, but I'm with Hank Fonda and Dick Widmark, right? And we're all in these white overalls. And we've got to go in to this netted off place where the killer bees come out, and we let a load of killer bees out to see which direction they go in, because we want to find the other killer bees. And I'm waiting to do this take with great trepidation. And I said, well, what about the stings? And what they had is they had all these like mobile laboratories, and they had sort of illegal aliens in there taking the stings out of each bee. I had 1 million bees they took the stings out of. The problem was they missed a few. And every now and then one of the unit would go, ah! And they'd go, hot one, and it was like, now we knew, we had to go in there and the bees and we'd watch, but they were all inside a net so we could get them all back in again. We didn't want them escaping. And we all stood there and they let the bees out. And what we didn't know was that the bees do not defecate in their own area. They wait till they get outside. So the 1 million bees came over and crapped on us. In advance of the critics, I might add. Now, one individual bee's little whatever, poo, is not very big. But 1 million of them, and you start getting a sort of veil of brown over your white overalls. And so all my trepidations about this scene, which I hated the idea of doing, came true. So the swarm was, as the critic said, a load of crap. Well, no, I don't want to answer the question. I didn't have a funny answer to the question. I thought, what was the question?
No, the question is, did you ever come to a moment in a scene?
Yeah, that was the answer to that, a moment in a scene. I thought, I'm going to be shit on by all these bees. Or stung by them. No, I know what you mean by a scene which is so, yeah.
Where
right.
you can't get the juice.
No, I couldn't bring something to.
Did you ever, I mean, has it ever happened to you that you just dried up, or that you just,
Yeah.
you were asked to do something and you started to struggle with it and it wasn't there?
I had to do a scene where the other actor and I had to drink a bottle of brandy to do it, which was in Death Trap. I had Christopher Reeve and I played homosexuals, and eventually we had a love scene where we had to kiss each other.
Uh-huh.
And then, so we had this bottle of brandy, and we both got bombed out of our minds, and then we couldn't remember the dialogue. And we're standing there going, what's the next line? And trying to be effeminate and masculine at the same time, you know. And eventually we got the kiss done, and it was the tightest lip kiss in the history of cinema. You know, and I felt quite feminine because Chris Reeve was bigger than me. I thought, and I felt, I don't want to be the fluffy one. You know, because I'm quite butch. If I was gay, I wouldn't be the fluffy one. I'd be the other one. The one with the short hair, you know, and the muscles. That would be me, like that. The steroids and all that.
You, looking at the directors that you've worked with, these kind of legends like Huston, Preminger, and Lewis Gilbert and all that, do you see, forget whether it's good or bad, I'm not asking for a qualitative judgment, but do you see a difference between the technique or the approach of the older directors that you worked with in the 60s and the newer, younger group of directors that you've been working with more recently?
Yeah. On A Man Who Would Be King, Sean and I were there were forever tracks down there, and the camera would go past, and we were forever looking at each other, going across these tracks like this, you know, so not to trip over. And we couldn't look down because there was no track. The camera would go right by, and we'd be... And one day I said to Houston, I said, we've always got the tracks right where we're walking. I said, and I said, why is that? He said, because the camera isn't there. He said, if the camera goes by you and there's no tracks, there was no camera. He said, the whole idea of the movie is to hide the camera. That's what it's all about. And modern day directors, I do what I call, look Ma, I'm directing camera work. The camera whizzes all over the place, you know, and it was a director's medium more when that didn't happen than now when it's supposed to be. You know, because you say to the director, well, I've got a very important bit here. Why is the camera in a helicopter? You know? And he said, because we were getting the sun just over the top of the skyscraper. I said, oh, all right. Yeah. And then, you know, you get panned by the critics, and he gets Best Director. Yeah.
Do you recall ever being petrified by the people that you had to work with?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, the first time you worked with somebody like Olivier, or like when you were young?
No, it was on one picture. I had a speech. It was on a swarm, actually. And I had to give a lecture on entomology, which is not easy, by the way. And I looked down, and there was Henry Fonda, Olivia de Havilland, and Richard Widmark sitting there. And I died stone dead. I had to ask for them to be taken away. They
did?
brought the camera in so that we couldn't see the backs of their head, and took them. I said, "You go and have a drink." I said, "Go and have a cup of coffee."
So you literally asked
I
for
literally
them?
asked them to take them away, and I just did it to the empty seats. Yeah, it's very intimidating. I found Hollywood very strange like that. I remember once I was going to Las Vegas on a very small plane with Frank Sinatra, and now we're sitting here. It's Frank Sinatra. I've been in Hollywood 3 weeks, and I'm sitting there. It's Frank Sinatra sitting there, and I'm talking away. We're chatting away, and then suddenly I went, "This is Frank Sinatra," and I'm talking to him. Shit. And then I went all inward, and he said, "What's the matter, Michael?" I said, "Well, I just realized who I'm talking to." I said, "You're Frank Sinatra." He said, "You know, it's a funny thing. The same thing happened to me when I met Ronald Colman, who was a very famous old actor. And it happens to everyone who goes to Hollywood, you know. They gave a party for me. Shirley MacLaine, she brought me to Hollywood. They gave a party for me. I mean, people didn't come for me, they came for Shirley. And the first person to walk in was Gloria Swanson. It's amazing. It's like seeing the Mona Lisa, because the first thing you think is how small she is. She's tiny. I was just doing that, because I was a film fan and starstruck. I'm not anymore. Well, I'm older than all the film stars. They'll say, "I went to see you on my 14th birthday."
If you were going to start today and do it all over again, would you go to acting school, do you think?
Yes.
You would?
Yeah, I'd go to acting school. It saves a lot of mistakes. If you don't go to acting school, you make all your mistakes in public, which is quite a lot of derision. Also, acting school is a good place to meet contemporaries who could help you as you go along. Plus, agents go to acting schools, and it's a shortcut to jobs. I mean, I took absolutely the hardest possible way to do it, because I didn't know any better. If my children wanted to go to acting school, wanted to become actors, I'd send them straight to the best acting school possible.
You've played such a variety of characters. Americans, Cockneys, high-class British, musicals, comedies, whatever. Are you looking for something different all the time? Are you looking for something that touches you? Are you looking for a challenge? Can you define for us what you're
looking for a challenge all the time, because it not only has to be interesting for you to watch me, it has to be interesting for me. I can't go out. I mean, I could have played Alfie 400 times, you know, just go out and get the girls and all that sort of stuff. I mean, at the moment, I'm playing a Texan in Texas. And I'm playing a picture called Secondhand Lions with Bob Duvall, and we're brothers who inherit a nephew who's played by Haley Joel Osment. Now, this is a wonderful, touching script. And they said, "You've got to play a Texan." And of course, I busted my butt to learn a Texan accent, because I wanted to do this script, you know? And the Texan accent, I mean, I'm working all day with 100 Texans, and they all go, "It's great."
When you're doing that, when you're working with an accent, as you bloody Brits do so well, is it a little bit like having a bit of a veil in front of you when you're trying to see something? Can you be as tuned to your own impulses as you can when you're not thinking about your speech?
Remember I said you do the 4 hours rehearsal on your own, you do the 6 hours rehearsal on your own, because you've got to make that accent disappear. You just got to be able to go into it. It's what I said. I don't want to be a British actor doing the best Texan accent you've ever heard. I don't want to be a Texan doing nothing. And now, I go in and out of it just to test it. And the technicians who I'm talking to take no notice at all, because the Texan voice seems just as natural to me and them as the London voice.
And it's comfortable enough for you that you don't ever want to wave, you don't ever wish you didn't have to do it?
No. I get a lot of fun out of it now.
You do?
Yeah, sure. But you need a very good dialect coach. When I first started doing it, I was talking like that and doing this and that and that. And he said to me, "Michael, in Texan, the words lean on each other like that. You just keep going, there's no pause. Like you're doing with the British, is staccato. Texan,
Right.
he said, the words go like that, straight on each other. They just fall over. And he's right. And that was just one little clue. And it got me on the road.
When was the first time you had to do it? Wasn't it in Zulu? The
What, an
first time
accent?
you had to do it?
I did an upper crust accent in Zulu, yeah. But I knew that. But what I'd been in the army with upper crust officers, but what I did was for about 6 weeks, once a week, I went to the officers' mess lunch, the Coldstream Guards, everybody was terribly like that. And it was all, because I knew how officers treated privates, because I was a private, and that's how the bastards treated me. But I didn't know how officers behave with each other, which is the whole thing in this movie. It was a relationship of two officers. So I went to the officers' mess and watched very closely how they behave with each other. And that's how I learned to be like an officer.
Did you?
I'll tell you something about British, I'm sorry.
No, please.
About British pronunciation and everything. I played a man called Lieutenant Bromhead, Bromhead. And at the premiere, there were 50 of his relations. And each one of them, very quietly, very, very unobtrusively, so it wouldn't embarrass me, came up and said, "You do know it's not Bromhead, it's Bromhead." I didn't know that. Well, you can do all the research, and everything. I mean, he was a real character. He was a real man, and I researched into him. But it's funny with research with an actor. I played President de Klerk of South Africa, right? In a TV movie I played with Sydney Pollack, who played Mandela. And eventually, we met them, Mandela and de Klerk. And I had studied de Klerk. I knew everything about him. I knew every speech. I had newsreels, everything, photographs. And we went out to dinner, and he never stopped smoking. He was a chain smoker. And every time a camera came, he put the cigarette down. So there he was, a chain smoker, and from all my research, I never knew. Oh. And throughout the entire thing, everybody who knew him knew he was a chain smoker. You see me playing him, and he was a non-smoker. You make mistakes like that.
Have you ever had any desire to direct?
No, not at all.
Never?
No, it's the hours are too long. And the time is too, can you imagine being in post-syncing for 6 weeks? I do 2 days of ADR and I'm going nuts. Yeah. Sitting in there watching actors go, missing it, It would drive me up the wall and all the preparation and stuff.
You're writing. You've written a couple of books. Have you ever wanted to write a screenplay? Have you ever written a screenplay?
No, what I would do, I'm writing a thriller, but I've worked so much lately that I've fallen behind a couple of years. And it was about terrorism, the novel. It's just a thriller, and it's not some great work of art. But what happened was, unfortunately, real events have overtaken my story, so I've got to go back and start taking it further to where I was going. I start in a different place further along. But what I would do is, the only time I would ever direct is if I finished this book, I would write a screenplay, and I've written a part which is like the third biggest part, which I could play myself. And if I could get it off the ground, I would do that. I would only direct my own writing. That's how I feel. But I always have to have some impossible dream that couldn't possibly come true. That's the one at the moment. Because all the others have come true in my case.
Would you say that your career has gone through lots of cycles?
I'll say, yeah.
I mean, it hasn't been one continual climb. It's had valleys and it's had peaks.
There's been valleys and troughs and all sorts of things.
Do you think you understand why there have been troughs? And do you think that you should have done something different?
No, I think someone said to me the other day, "So are you going to retire?" I said, "No." I said, "I don't think you understand. In the movie business, you do not retire. The business retires you. It may retire you after one picture, or 3, right, or 12, And what the business did with me, it said, "We'll retire him." No, we won't. Yes, we will. No, we won't. At the moment, I'm in a big no, we won't.
Do you think you understand in each case why you get the yes we wills and why you get the no we won'ts?
Sure, it's a familiarity with you that people get fed up with, and then you have to go away and come back as something else.
Do you think,
I went away as a movie star and came back as an actor.
do you think you've made, do you think you've made dumb decisions?
No, you never make a dumb decision. Everybody else makes them.
Have you made decisions you'd make differently now?
No. I think there was never, and it's a thing I tell my children. I'll tell you a little story. I was rehearsing a play, and I had to come in eventually, and the couple on stage were ad-libbing, and eventually they had this row, and then he threw a chair at her and missed, and it blocked the doorway, and I went to get in, and I said to the producer, I said, I can't get in, sorry, there's a chair here. And he said to me a phrase which has stayed with me all my life. He said, use the difficulty. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, if it's a drama, he said, pick it up and smash it. If it's a comedy, fall over it. But use it. Don't stand there telling me you can't get in, you know? Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. Every time anything bad happens to me, it says use the difficulty. And then I got to a stage, for instance, where the scripts dry up. You know, you become. I always say if you're in, you know, they say Michael Caine. It's a small black woman. Get Michael Caine. He can do it. You know. Yeah. If you're out, he said, well, it's a Michael Caine story. He said, well, Michael Caine's too tall. There's always you know, and so sure. That's what happens to you. And you've got to live it out. What I did is I got to a stage that the scripts were getting worse and worse, you know, and then I'd finally made one and I went, that's it. And I thought I'll write my autobiography. I spent some time writing my autobiography, then I went on holiday. I opened 8 restaurants. I was living in South Beach. I was lying in the sun. Yeah. And then suddenly one day I thought, geez, I'd like to go back to work after about 2.5 years. And I rang my agent, and she sent me another load of crap scripts, which I didn't want to do. So I thought, oh, sod it, I'll lay on the beach a bit longer. And then Bob Rafelson and Jack Nicholson turned up with a script called Blood and Wine. And he said, why don't you do this? So I said, yeah. He said, you're not doing anything else? I said, no. And then I did Blood and Wine, and I enjoyed the experience of working with Jack Nicholson, who I think is one of the greatest actors in movies. Really incredible, and I had such a great experience with him. I wanted to do it again, and it was working with him and Bob Rafelson that brought me back to want to do it. And then Harvey Weinstein of Miramax came to my rescue with scripts that I wanted to do with Little Voice and Cider House Rules, and that was Harvey, and you know, and then I had someone on my side, you know.
Did you ever, when the career goes into a trough, do you lose a degree or a half a degree of confidence, this confidence that you have in yourself?
No, I think if you're an actor, you have a built-in arrogance that everyone else is wrong. You know, the reason they're not choosing you is not because there's anything wrong with you, it's because they're stupid. And they have no taste.
And that doesn't get shaken?
No, never. I never get shaken in anything I do. I think you must have complete confidence in yourself. Otherwise, you couldn't survive these blows like this. You have to be slightly insane, I must admit. And we all are in this business, or you wouldn't be in it. You know, walking around dressed up and pretending you're someone else. You're all nuts.
Here's a question from Melinda York, who asks, is there any role or character that you played that really changed you or changed your life? And if so, why?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Before I became a success very late in life, where I would have got roles that would have changed me. I mean, playing the policeman and saying, come along with me at the end of a movie, didn't change me. By the time I got to parts that did change me, could change me, I was 29, and I was a very, very firmly set character and human being at 29. And there was really nothing from my life. You have to remember from the background I come, and the experiences I've been through as an unwanted actor and as a soldier in a war. There was very little any movie could tell me about the human condition. But I already knew it.
But do you think that you've learned something about life from being an actor?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about dealing with superiors, you know, take no notice.
Have you learned about, but you haven't learned about something, or let's say, hasn't it made you think and be preoccupied, let's say, with relationships? With
oh, you do that all
with...
the time. Oh, yeah, but it's never affected me personally. It's very difficult to explain to people that none of this touches you if you have your own life. I've been married very happily to one woman for 30 years. So the movies are outside that barrier. Movies and things of that kind don't get any disappointments or anything, don't get inside that barrier. The family, which is so important to me, remains a constant. Just remains a constant and is my life. The movies are my profession.
I imagine I know your answer to this, but this is a question from Cindy Marty, who asks, if you could do one thing in your life differently, what would it be? Based on what you've said, nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. Don't ever look back and think you should have changed that. Because, you know, if you're not looking forward, you'll trip over the next hole.
Ian Shen writes, what one person in your life has been the most influential or inspirational in your growth as an actor, as an artist, and how?
As an artist?
Yeah.
Well, it was when I wanted to be a movie actor and watching the movies, I noticed that all the actors were tall, dark, and handsome. Tyrone Power, Robert Taylor, all. And I was blonde, and there were no blonde people. And I thought, oh my God, you can't be an actor with fair hair. Because there are no actors with fair hair. There weren't any. Then Van Johnson came along, and I went, well, I don't know when I want to be Van Johnson. And then suddenly one day I realized Spencer Tracy had fair hair. It never occurred to me. I must have seen, it was black and white films, he must have had Brill cream or something on.
Yeah.
And then suddenly in this film, he had fair hair. And Spencer Tracy became my idol. And Spencer Tracy, funnily enough, I have a similar thing of acting. As he was non-histrionic the way I am. He disappeared into parts. He just played parts rather than, he was a part rather than acting a part.
Right.
And I think he's had that effect on me. The only other person who had any effect on me was my English master when I was 10. And he guided me right through English literature and English drama. And I became a reader. Books, I think, were one of the most important things in my life. Books.
Did you, when you work with somebody like Olivier, do you think you learned something from it?
Yeah, you learn to duck.
What do you mean by that?
He used to lark about and sort of do a couple of rehearsals, and then suddenly on the take, he'd come at you like a whirlwind, you know, and you go, oh, shoot, why wasn't I prepared? And he caught me out at that many times. But
you mean he would
underplay the rehearsal, and then on the take, he'd go into a whole different thing. The bugger.
Why? Why do you think he did that? He wasn't trying to get you, was he?
No, he wasn't. No, we did a scene one day, and I was ready for him, and I came back at him. And then when Joe Mankiewicz said cut, he said to me, it's one of the greatest compliments I ever had as an actor. He said, Michael, I thought I had an assistant. I see I have a partner.
Oh.
And I said, Larry, you're a much better actor than I am. I said, but whatever you do, I am never backing off. And he said, what a jolly good idea, Michael. It was great, Larry.
Heather Lohmeyer asks, what are you afraid of or feel you still have to work
I'm not afraid of anything in the business. There's a couple of studio heads, but apart from those. And I mean, the only thing I would ever be afraid of is poverty, because I know what it's like. You know, that would be, I would be terrified to go back to how I was when I was very young, to how it was. It wasn't bad when I was young because I didn't know anything else. Now I know what it's like out here. I don't want to go back there. But I'm not afraid of old age because it's better than the alternative, right? By the way, I'm afraid of the alternative.
You did a book about acting. I'm sorry, don't know it, but have you ever formally taught?
No, what I did. About teaching? No, what it was, they used to do a master class on BBC, ballet dancing, opera, theatre acting, theatre directing, and this woman chased me for 2 years to do movie acting, and I resisted and resisted. And finally, she got arrested for snorting cocaine, and I thought, it's because of me. So I agreed. She was having a nervous breakdown, so I said, I'll do it. So I did it, and they transcribed it into a book. And they sold there's a video and a book, but I didn't write a book about it. I just said stuff. And they wrote it all down.
But would you think about teaching if someone said would you moderate a scene class or would you teach an improv?
I have done, I mean not as a profession, but just as a one-off. And sometimes in a movie you teach people as you go along. You know, Do Ha-Yen, she'd never made any big movies.
Right.
And we had a lot of scenes together, and I was always saying, this is what we're going to do. And we'd have little whispers in the corner, and I'd say, don't forget to bring that eye over, because the camera's over here, look at me. There's a trick you do with eyes, which I taught her. And I saw an interview with her, and she said, how is your relationship with Michael Caine? She said, he's my teacher, she said. And it wasn't that, it was just, we were trying to get the scene right. It wasn't like a lesson.
I understand.
You know? But she listened to me, and she got it all correct.
Greg Zirkle, I think it is. Circle with a Z, yeah, Zirkle. Do you have any desire to go back and work on the stage?
None at all.
Why?
I had a very tough time on the stage, and I always regarded the stage as a woman who I loved very much and treated me like dirt. And the cinema was a beautiful woman who'd do anything I said. And television was a one-night stand. But there's a lot to be said for one-night stands, I'm told.
Donald O'Sullivan asks, is Hollywood ravenous, rapacious, and godless?
Yeah, it's just the same, yes. The same as it always was. Yeah, well, it's not exactly godless. They make religious films. If people make films about religion, it doesn't qualify as godless, does it? You know, godly. No.
Do you worry? Do you think at all about artistic bankruptcy or any of those epithets that get hurled at Hollywood by, let's say, the theater, or possibly even other cinemas other than American cinema? That Hollywood is the sort of whipping boy of the world,
yeah, well,
in terms of so much of what's considered its content, its focus, its preoccupation with money, its lousy morals, and so on.
Yeah.
Do you think about that at all?
No, I don't think about it. To me, if I wanted to make an independent picture, the only reason there's a camera crew there and all this film being processed and all that because big Hollywood studios are employing them while I spent 2 years trying to find the money. Right. So if the big stuff wasn't there, the small stuff wouldn't be there. You look at these countries who don't have a big film industry, they don't have a small one. One relies on the other.
Right.
In my, I mean, but look for instance at Miramax. I'd say that's Disney, New Line, who I'm working for now. That's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers. They've got these arms that do experimental pictures and help. You've got Sundance, you know.
Is there a big difference between the film I'm not talking about size now.
Yeah.
Is there a big difference in attitude between the film industry in England and the film industry here?
The only difference in England is we haven't got much of a film industry anymore. We were always very reliant on Americans over there. We have small films which are very parochial and don't get released anywhere else. And it was only in the 60s that they started to, with pictures like, I mean, Alfie was a parochial film, which I never expect to get released anywhere else. But the British movie industry is very dependent on American money because the British businessmen don't invest in British movies. I mean, sometimes with very good reason.
Is there a difference? I mean, you seem, as you talk, to be extraordinarily self-sufficient as an actor. That is, a bit, let's not say totally director-proof, but a bit director-proof.
No one's director-proof.
Right, I understand. But do you find there to be any difference that you can speak about, or is always individual, between the directors that you've had in England and the directors you have, the American directors?
Well, no, they're interchangeable because half the English directors are, you know, the British film industry is alive and well in Hollywood. You've got Tony and Ridley Scott and all those people. They're all in America.
Right.
You look at, if you knew if they put the nationality beside the credits on an American film, you'd be stunned at how many people from England are on those sets. Right. I've seen it a lot, and they come here because we just can't get it off the ground in England. We make wonderful pictures. The technicians are just as good as any. I mean, all the Indiana Jones, James Bonds, and everything. They're all made there. Right. You know, with British technicians. But it's just getting a British subject that will spread worldwide, have an international appeal. And then if you do that, everybody says, "Oh, you're commercial. You've sold out to the American dollar." And then if you make a parochial film, 12 people in England go and see it. You know, it's about, you know, you cannot make a film about stamp collecting in Manchester.
Is there anybody whose judgment you rely on? Is there anybody you discuss your films with? I mean, you have an agent, I'm sure. Your wife.
Oh,
you
sure.
Talk
My
to
agent,
Shakira.
Tony Howard. Yeah.
You talk to your wife.
Yeah, I talk to my wife.
Does she read the script?
No, she listens to what I say about it, and then she'll read it if she thinks it's interesting. Which means if there's a lot of love scenes. It's very interesting who's going to play the part.
This is from Marianne Hebnick, I think. Of all the characters you've played, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, Quite American, this one. Yeah, I love this. Well, he's an extremely despicable character. Mm-hmm. But he has all the weaknesses that we all have. He has weaknesses that I should have and haven't got, so I feel slightly superior to him.
Did you know, did it take some falling in love with, or did you know as soon as you read the screenplay that you wanted to do it?
Of this, yeah, instantly. I was about 10 pages in, and my wife always knows. She's always in the other room when I go, "This the one?" And she goes, "What? What is it?" I said, "Quite American." She going to do it? I said, "Yeah." And then the next question is, "Where is it?" I said, "Vietnam." And there was a long pause. She usually likes to hear French Riviera, you know. But we went to Vietnam, and that was wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
I had a lot of misconceptions about Vietnam. It's a really great place.
Well, we'll talk about
oh,
the
all right.
misconceptions for a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, what were your misconceptions, and what did you find different?
I thought I'd been a soldier in Berlin in occupation after World War II, and like all of Berlin and Germany were flattened, the cities. I expected Vietnam to be like that, but because the Americans didn't bomb the cities. Although you always see those flying fortresses doing that, they didn't bomb the cities. I also expected as Vietnamese would look at me and imagine me to be an American. The people in Vietnam didn't know who I was, but they would just look and say, this is an American. And I never ever got one word of anti or anything nasty. Everyone was very pleased to see me. Everyone was very kind. And I was amazed at how luxurious the facilities for tourists were there. Mm-hmm. And people like me coming to make a movie. It was incredible. Plus the fact is the beauty of the country itself. You forget there's all wonderful temples and extraordinary places there to see. And the food is great, and the people were nice, you know. And some of them were very beautiful, as you can see.
When you saw the film the first time, were you surprised, pleased, displeased, concerned? Was it better than you thought it was going to be? About what you thought it would be?
No, it couldn't have been better than I thought it would be. I'd always thought it was a great script. I thought Philip Noyce a great director for it. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, that's a great movie, which is why I was so surprised when I heard it was going to be released on January the 5th.
Well, we fixed that.
We did.
You've been working nonstop, says Aaron Wolf, for the last 46 years. In only 2 of those years did you not have a film come out. Why do you work that regularly? What's the thing about it? Do you not get tired?
Well, first of all, it was fear that I'd never work again. And I always sort of thought, well, if I have 3 pictures between the next flop and the next one, I've got a chance of surviving. I also came from a very poor family. I don't want to push this poor thing, you know, it's okay. But I came from a poor family, and you can't become rich and live a luxurious life without taking everybody with you. You know what I'm saying? And so I did this for my mum's house, another one for my brother's house, and I bought everybody a house. And I was doing all this. What I did is a lot of pictures, a lot of unsuccessful ones too, I did just in order to get all this money before everyone found me out.
Right.
And and then once I'd done everything, I stopped. And I thought, wait a minute, this can't go on like this, you know. So that, I was trying to figure out which 2 years I didn't work. I don't remember having 2 years.
That's
That's when I wrote my book, and I did all that other thing and opened the restaurants.
Richard Rempel asks, is there a particular actor who influenced you more than any other actor?
Tracy.
Tracy,
yeah.
Claudia Katz says, was there ever a point in your life when you felt like throwing in the towel?
There was one point when I was about 23, I was out of work. I'd been married, I had a baby, my marriage fell apart, and my father died of cancer. And I thought, this is it, you know. I was working in a laundry, and not even in the clean bit, I was wheeling in the dirty laundry. And I thought, this is it. And my mother came to me and she said, I got £26 of insurance off your father's death. She said, and she gave it to me. And at that time, it was £6 on a train to Paris. So I went to Paris for 6 months and rediscovered myself. And when I came home, my mother said, good job you came back. She hadn't seen me. She said, good job you came back. She said, your agent called yesterday. She's got you a job. And that was it. I spent this time in Paris, I was a kind of bum, but I'd never been to Paris. And it was so close. And I fell in love with the place, and Paris is a great place to walk, and nobody takes any notice. And there used to be the Gare Saint-Lazare there, which was the bus station that took you to the airport. And I bought an old suitcase, and I used to go to sleep on the bench there with the suitcase beside me, and an old ticket that I got out of the waste paper basket in my hand, so that no one would wake me up and throw me out. Because you know, you always see people with a boarding pass and a case, and they're asleep in a thing, waiting for the plane. I used to do that all night, and no one ever fell in. And there was an American student who was at the sandwich bar, and he used to give me sandwiches and coffee, and I existed on that. And then I got a job on Boulevard Clichy, they used to sell a frite, which is a bag of French fries. A bag of French fries for a franc, a frite for a franc it was. And I had this big bowl of arachide, peanut oil. And then you do the chips, and then the owner had the thing behind you get frankfurters and all that stuff. So I make very good French fries. The trick is you fry them twice, in case you don't know. And then I did that, and then I came home, and I still love Paris.
I don't know what you're like about advice, but Shirley Witt asks, what advice do you have for someone starting out in this business? Do you have any advice?
Well, I think advice is cheap because that's about what it's worth.
Yeah.
But if I was starting out in this business, I would start out in the theatre, because sometimes it's going to hold you in great stead. Because if you want longevity in television or movies, I suggest you start in the theatre, because you're eventually going to have to do a comedy. And unless you've worked with a live audience, you won't know how to time a comedy line. Because you do comedy in the studio, if anyone laughs, they're fired.
What's been your most humbling audition experience? Do you ever have you had to audition and read?
Yes.
When you were young?
Yeah. I auditioned for Alfie and I didn't get it in the theatre.
You're kidding?
No, I didn't get it. I told you I hate the theatre. Bloody.
That was from Jen Hogan. You mean you auditioned, didn't get it, and then did the movie?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't get it.
Who played it in the theater?
Michael Medwin. See, there you go. I mean, it's okay. Like, if I lose a part to Marlon Brando, I understand it. But to lose a part to Michael Medwin.
Jeff Peters says, were you nervous about doing Alfie because of the subject matter? At that time, to the best of my knowledge, no film had dealt with abortion in that way.
Yeah, that was a very nerve-wracking thing to do. But I've always been in pictures with things like that. I don't know, I seem to attract those scripts. But yes, it was very, very hard to do, especially as I had to sell what you saw by the look on my face. You couldn't cut to anything.
Right.
Yeah. And so I had to imagine what I was looking at.
What film that you've done has been the biggest surprise to you? Has there been a film that just...
Well, Alfie was the biggest surprise. The fact that it went to America. I didn't know it was going to America until suddenly one day they came to me and they said, you've got to do 125 loops of dialogue, redo the dialogue, ADR. I said, but it's been out 6 months. Why are you ADRing it now? I said, for America, they don't understand what you're talking about. It's true. That's the first time I knew it was going to America. And I'll tell you a funny thing. Ipcress File had come earlier, and that was at the Coronet or Baronet opposite Bloomingdale's in New York.
Right.
When I got there to publicize Alfie, Alfie was a big hit. Universal bought Ipcress File off of the company that owned the Baronet and the Coronet, and they released it all over America after Alfie. So whenever I talk to Americans, they think I made Alfie before Ipcress File. Yeah. Very funny thing. first day I ever spent in America, I went on a Today Show at 7:30 in the morning, and I was interviewed by Barbara Walters, and who'd been doing the job for 2 weeks. And in the evening, I went on the Jack Parr show, but he didn't turn up, and I was interviewed by Johnny Carson, who was a stand-in. That was the first day in America. And then it was all downhill from there.
Charles Snowden says, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is one of my all-time favorite films. The timing between you and Steve Martin was right on. Can you talk a bit about comic timing and what importance, if any, it has while you're shooting a film? Is it very organic for you, or is it something you have to work on technically with your fellow actors, directors, so on?
It's something which I just mentioned just now in the answer to the other question. It's live audiences. Theatre, I mean, Steve didn't do theatre, but he was stand-up comic, so he knew it even better than I did, Steve Martin. And I'd done many comedies in the theatre, and that's where it stands you in good stead. I bet you it wouldn't have been half as funny if Steve and I had been just movie actors and never played to a live audience. I cannot stress how important a live audience is, even for drama. I would hate to go into a movie never having been in a play on stage.
Do you think that that's because of something technical you get from the sense of feedback?
The feedback from the audience, and then when you go in the cinema, it's still there. You can time it. You know, it's amazing, really amazing.
Do you imagine an audience ever while you're acting?
No. In film, you can't imagine an audience because you're only relating to the other person. Actor. It's real. You imagine it's real. So much so that, you know, it almost becomes insane.
If you were not an actor, what would you, if there weren't acting, what would you do? What would you have been?
I'd be an architect. I love buildings. Whenever I buy a new house, which isn't very often, I'm not saying I've got a lot of money or anything, whenever I do buy a new house, I'd buy a doer-upper. I never bought anyone's decoration in my life. And I usually buy something which has a duff garden so I can tear it apart. That's all I do. My wife hates it because she lives with builders all the time.
But there are those who feel that cinema is very, very close to architecture in some way.
Maybe it is.
It's interesting.
I'll tell you what is close to cinema. I saw a clue in the London Times crossword. It said, can only be found in cinema. And M. Caine cinema is the only word you can spell out of M. Caine, using all the letters. It's completely unconscious on my part. But most of the rest of my life is completely unconscious on my part anyway.
Howard and Sharon Chase asked that question in case. Donna Jones, who are your favorite actors? Well, we talked about that. Yeah. Patricia Mullins asks, what was the biggest challenge in making The Man Who Would Be King? What was the greatest pleasure in it? What was the toughest part, the biggest challenge, and what was the greatest pleasure?
Well, the greatest pleasure was acting with Sean, you know, the way, because we are very, very close friends.
Buddies, yeah.
And we transferred our sort of buddydom to the screen, right. and it worked, and it was so easy. The worst part was my wife played the princess and she married Sean. That was the worst bit. I didn't like that scene at all. But at least she didn't really marry him. She bit his neck and nearly killed him.
Sean has been known to be tough with directors.
Not with Houston. You? Not with Houston, he wasn't. No one's tough with Houston.
No.
Houston's tougher than everybody. Houston never says anything to you. One day I said to him, you never give me any direction, John. He said, you're being paid a great deal of money to do this.
Have you ever really had a fight with a director?
Oh, no. I stay absolutely calm at all times. I never lose my temper in a work situation. I'll go home and put the fist through the front door window. In a work situation, I stay calm, even if I'm flustered. John did give me one piece of advice on a movie. On that movie, I was doing a speech on The Man Who Would Be King, and he cut right in the middle of it. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't dried or fluffed or anything. And I said, "What's wrong, John?" He said, "You can speak faster, Michael. He's an honest man." So whenever I meet anybody who speaks slowly, I start looking. Kathleen, who was in Pritchard's Aunt? Kathleen Turner.
Yeah.
I told her that story. He only gave me one line of direction in the whole of the picture. She said, "I did Pritchard's Aunt." She said, "He only gave me one line of direction." I said, "Well, what was in it?" She said, "It was a scene." She said, "It was cut out of the picture." She said, "I played the daughter of a mafia man, and like he was a Catholic, and he thought I was virginal, even though I was the age I am, you know." And I lost my temper with him. I said, "Dad, you know, I'm not a virgin. I've had lots and lots of men." She said, "I've had men with dicks this big." She said, and the only direction Houston ever said, he said, "Make it a little smaller, honey." We're not on television or anything, are we? No.
Joanne Evans asks, would you, for whatever reason, I guess, like to do a famous historical, real character like Churchill or Einstein or Roosevelt, or do you prefer
No,
fictional?
I think, you're usually buried under 2 tons of makeup and nobody knows who the hell you are, you know what I mean? And then everybody says it's very unrealistic.
Did you find being a stranger in LA helpful or an advantage to you at all? I mean, a way to come and be a stranger in a strange country?
I found being a stranger in LA involuntary. Shirley MacLaine brought me over to she had a contract where she had a choice of leading men, and she was doing a picture called Gambit at Universal, and she brought me over, which was my first film in the United States. And she had seen Ipcress File and Alfie, and she brought me over to do that. And they put me in the Beverly Hills Hotel in a nice suite and everything. And then I never heard from anybody for 2 weeks. I'd get per diem, and the bills were paid. I got a per diem. And I only made friends with one person, and that was John Wayne. I used to stand in the lobby watching the people, see if I could see any film stars, because I didn't know where to go. And I couldn't drive a car. And so and there were no cabs in those days. There were never any cabs in Hollywood. And then one day, John Wayne walked in, and he said to me, "Are you in a movie called Alfie?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You're going to be big boy." He said, "But take my advice," he said. "How did John Wayne?" He said, "Take my advice, kid. Talk low, talk slow, and don't say too much." I then proceeded to make 20 pictures with speaking as fast as I could in a very high voice. But anyway, nobody called, did anything, until one day they said, "Tomorrow, Shirley MacLaine is giving a party welcoming you to Hollywood." And they gave this party, all these big stars came, and they all talked to each other. Nobody talked to me, because nobody knew who I was. And they all came, so one where Gloria Swanson walked in. The second person who walked in was Frank Sinatra. And so they all talked to each other. And then the next day, my phone started to ring. And it was, in those days, I was single. And in those days, there were these ladies who were always looking for single men for parties, you know. And then I was on this circuit with the ladies in the discos and all that.
Yeah.
So life brightened up visibly after that. But it was quite weird. I remember I was dancing around with Shirley MacLaine, and someone was dancing past us, and the man said, "Who the hell is this Michael Caine anyway?" And nobody knew anything, why I was there or anything. But then I went to Universal, and they gave me a bungalow as a dressing room, which was better than any building I'd lived in up until that time. And next door was Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, and I used to go and have lunch with Alfred Hitchcock every day.
Not bad.
And he always had steak and a baked potato, that's all. That's all, and a cup of coffee. But he's still very fat. You know what he did? He probably ate a lot when he went home in the evening. That's what they do. When in public, they go, I only have this.
In Dress to Kill, Aixa, I believe that's the way you pronounce this name, A-I-X-A, you dressed as a woman. Have you ever played a woman in anything else, or was that the only time?
Yeah, I just did a comedy called The Actors in Dublin, which will come out in March, in which I did drag again.
What was it like?
It was just as bad as the first time. But without the fear, because the first time I dressed in drag, I thought to myself, supposing I like this. Well, you don't know, do you? You put on all their tights and all going, you go, oh, this is the greatest thing ever happened. No, it was bloody awful.
What
it
was
was
the
awful.
most difficult part What was the most difficult part of playing a woman? I know the clothes.
Yeah, I know the clothes.
But I mean, emotionally, what was the hardest for you to find? Or
Well, to get my voice up a little bit, that was a start. But with the tights on, that helped. And no, it's very difficult to play a woman without caricaturing, especially if you're someone as big as me, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw in the Actors the other day. It looked awful, but it's very funny in the Actors. But my agent at the time with Dress to Kill was Sue Menges. She rang me and she said, I've just seen Dress to Kill. She said, you must never play a woman again. She said, you look like shit. And she was right. I mean, it's nice if you're a small man with nice features, you know. Yeah. But I mean, what's the name of the woman who spilled the beans on Monica Lewinsky?
Linda Tripp.
Linda Tripp.
Linda Tripp.
At the Academy Awards, Billy Crystal said Michael Caine in Dress to Kill looked like Linda Tripp. And I saw a picture of Linda. I thought, shit, she does. It's true. And then I didn't see anything about Linda Tripp, and I saw Linda Tripp. She had her hair changed. She'd lost about 20 or 30 pounds. Yeah. Her clothes were different, and she looked like a completely different person. She'd obviously spotted that.
When you're doing a tough emotional role, something maybe like what you just did, Thomas Fowler here. Do you have any particular technique that helps you to deal with these, for an actor, rather terrible rhythms of up, okay, now go and you sit for 30 minutes or an hour and you fall half asleep and you cool off completely and okay, quick, now you go, throw a little makeup on and now start again. Do you have any of your own technique that you found to keep your energy and the emotion close to the surface or to get back to it again?
It's you don't dissipate it in the dressing room. You don't sit there, you just relax completely. I usually fall asleep. And I wake up, I'm pissed off immediately. but it's everything I do is what I said about Stanislavski in the first place, is sense memory. You go back to whatever it is.
Do you go outside? Do you go into your own personal life? Do you go outside the text to get what you need for a scene?
Yeah, oh sure, all the time, time, so long as it fits. That's where you're either successful or a failure at it. It fits or it doesn't. But I always call movie acting operating with a laser as opposed to a scalpel. I mean, as you just hone in and hone in and hone in and hone in right through from all right, so you're asleep in the dressing room, you've got to come out and go nuts, you know, or burst into tears. you just start honing in, but you don't waste the time when the camera isn't turning. What's the American phrase? Leaving the game in the locker room?
Yeah.
Wait, and then when it says action, then you'll find it. It'll all well up in yourself. You're a human being, you know, and you know what you've got to, if you've got to say you love someone, or say you hate someone, or get a laugh, it will come up in you. And people, always, I see actors going all over the place, worrying. They go to rushes and worry about what happened yesterday. I said, what are you going to rushes for? You can't do anything about them. Dude, what do you, there's a camera on over there, you better worry about that. In any case, you go to rushes, you don't get home early.
Right.
Which is one of my great talents. I get home earlier than any other actor. I can change faster than a stripper.
Do you ever get self-conscious on a set when something is asked emotionally for you? Do you ever feel the sense of people watching and feel an obligation and therefore get tense?
No. Very early on, I had a situation like that. In Alfie, there was an emotional scene. And I couldn't get it, and obviously I was a bit strangulated. And Lewis Gilbert said, Michael, see, you're embarrassed about this. I said, yeah. He said, you must remember, he said, the only reason all these people are here is to get you onto the screen. And they all want you to do it as well as you possibly can. And they're not going to laugh at you for anything. They're not going to think you're a fool. You can do anything you like. And my entire, right through to this film here, is that which I call emotional nudity, which in some cases you take it so far, it can be embarrassing. Now, I would never take my clothes off in a movie, but I would take my emotions off and let you see not the inside of me, because I don't hold up a picture, the inside of you, because I hold up a mirror in my acting. I want to be like you.
But you're
I don't want to be like a movie star.
But you're making it out of you.
Yeah, you make it out of you, but you go to places, you always try, if you get a part like this, for instance, you go to places where you've never been before. And I've been an actor for 40 years, and I go to places where I've never been before in this. This is why this is my favorite film, because I've gone one step further. One step further. And it's never, if any, I imagine it's a Screen Actors Guild, there are 1 or 2 actors in the audience. Don't ever be afraid to just open up, because if you are afraid and shy, the people will be embarrassed. But if you're not afraid and shy, you will take them with you. And they'll wonder how and why they went and how you managed that.
Good. Okay.
Does anyone have a white Mercedes?
Okay, let's come full circle here and come back to Fowler, then the way we began it. You've played so many different characters. Why? What is it about Fowler? What made you dig farther? How is it that you've never been to those places in any of those other characters? Where do you have to go in this role that you haven't been?
Well, it's the thing, it's in ice skating, in the Olympics, you get marks for degree of difficulty. And the degree of difficulty in this man is the subtlety of what he's doing. And then going into the massive emotional things that he does. And the duplicity in his character. And his love for this girl, who is young enough to be his granddaughter, for Christ's sake. You know? It's quite an extraordinary thing to go through. Plus, I was playing a man who is written by Graham Greene, and I knew Graham Greene, and I figured this was autobiographical in a certain sense. You know, so I already knew where I was starting from with Graham, which is his voice and his mannerisms, which I do, you know? And So it became more and more important to me as I opened up these layers of myself. And a lot of it is just in the eyes. And just changing your eyes and punctuating the thoughts of the person who's talking to you, you know? And with Philip Noyce, who is an obsessive perfectionist, in other words, a pain in the ass, he would never let me go by without having touched every tiny spot. Because once he'd seen it, in rehearsals or something, you do 3 rehearsals and you get 4 different things, there'd be 12. By the time you got to the take, if you did 11, he'd take it again because he'd want all 12. And that's what was so fascinating about doing it. And then there are very big emotional scenes where he tears himself apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Michael, for all of your 90-plus films, thank you, and for a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.